Parallel compression could well be the one thing that your mix is missing. And I don't mean that in the kind of this one trick is going to save your life kind of way, but I mean in the literal sense that parallel compression gives you so much vibe, so much character, and just it's about over processing and making stuff sound really great in kind of a wrong sort of way. You're over processing, you're going nuclear on stuff, adding loads of vibe and loads of character. And I want to show you how you can use it on different instruments here, because it can add something different depending on what you're adding it to and what you're kind of trying to get out of it. So let's take a look. Parallel compression. So parallel compression, for those of you who don't know, is when you have a super compressed version of something alongside a not super compressed version of something. It doesn't necessarily have to be super compressed. It's just you've got something that's compressed and something not compressed. So they're running in parallel. And there are various plugins that I like to use for this. I like to use something different each time. And the key thing is here, we're going crazy. We're doing a lot and making stuff that on its own sounds kind of weird. But when you bring it into the mix, sounds very, very cool. So here it's on drums, and I'm using the Safari Pedals Sunbear bus compressor here. If you take a listen to this drum track on its own with just the parallel compression, it sounds crazy. It sounds squashed. It sounds, you know, all these bad things. But when you bring it in, you realize why it's so important. So let's just hear it bad for a moment. I mean, bad is kind of a subjective thing, isn't it? I think that sounds cool as hell, but it's not a drum sound in itself. It's an accompaniment to a drum sound. So if we take a listen to the drums, and I'll mute the parallel compression, you'll hear it sounds okay, but it sounds kind of dead. And then when I bring the parallel compression in, oh, we get loads of vibe, we get loads of life, we get loads of character, and it just sounds cool. Okay, now we're talking. It just sounds great. It's just got this kind of explosive nature to it. And the way that I'm setting this up is just by going very aggressive. So I've got the ratio of 4.5 to 1. I've got the threshold down as far as it will go because I want it to be very compressed. I've got wild on. I've got input all the way up and kind of attenuating a little bit on the output. It's going to town. I've got the release all the way down, so it's super fast releasing. So it's compressing like crazy, but they're not compressing those tails too much. And that's how you get this explosive sound. What happens when you have that release all the way down is it compresses very, very quickly on the transient, which brings the volume of that transient down, which in kind of relative terms means that the sustain is brought up. So you've got transient there, sustain portion there, you're making the difference smaller. So in relative terms, it sounds like that sustain has got louder. Really, I guess it's just that the transient has got quieter, but it has this explosive nature. One thing you need to be aware of with parallel compression is that you're going to need to be pretty aggressive with the EQ, because if I just play this parallel compression on its own without any EQ, it sounds really cymbally and really kind of nasally. So then when you bring that in, it dulls it down. And here's the key thing. It doesn't have to sound great on its own. It just has to add that extra dimension, which is exactly what it's doing. So parallel compression on drums, big thumbs up, love it. Adding room, adding character, adding vibe, and just adding some kind of grittiness to the whole thing. Take a listen to the full mix. I'm going to start with parallel compression off, and then I'm going to bring it in, and you'll just hear everything get a little bit more tied together-y and kind of gluey. This is just on the drums, remember.
Sometimes I just stand outside and watch the world float on by. The endless dark of the night, infinity before my eyes. Shut myself away in the summer heat, singing the world was always at my feet. Been doing better since 16. In fact, I'm everything I dreamed to.
It adds a load of character, adds a load of life. It's spot on for this mix. Let's take a look at guitars, because guitars, well, to me, I don't know, I kind of view parallel compression on guitars as something very, very different. I don't think that with the transient nature of drums that they lend themselves to the same kind of parallel compression. I'm kind of using parallel compression as a bit of a squasher and a bit of a kind of a distortion box, actually, which is interesting. So it's on these guitars here, which is kind of just a, I don't know, like a lead guitar bit. Just take a listen to it on its own, and I'll mute the parallel compression. It's over here. Let's get rid of it. So this is it on its own before any parallel compression. But then I'll bring it in. So you hear when it's coming in, it's, yes, making it louder. That's by design. But it's not just making it louder as in just turning it up. It's adding this kind of fuzzy edge to it, and it's adding this overall solidity. Is that a word? I think it is. I'm going to use it. Solidity to the guitar track. Let's take a listen to the parallel track on its own, because this is kind of interesting. I'm on the Logic stock compressor, the Vintage FET, and I'm also using the Ozone 11, the imager, the kind of widener. I'm going all the way, and it's just chucking it into the left and right. So I've basically got nothing in the center of the parallel channel. Let's take a listen to what it's doing, because it's really gritting it up and just going crazy. Attack all the way down, fastest. Release all the way down, fastest. Ratio on essentially 5:1, and threshold pretty low as well. Let's take a listen to it. It's just completely changing it. It's essentially killing it, but in kind of a beautiful way. It's adding that layer of fuzz over the top of it, and it's adding this layer of solidity. It's a good word. I'm going to keep using that because it works for parallel compression. It kind of describes it. It's adding a foundation. It's adding a bit of life to it and a bit of solidness. No, solidity. It's adding solidity. If we take a listen to the guitars on their own before it, and then we bring it in, you're going to hear a big difference. So this is before parallel compression, and then we're going to bring it in. Just lifts it all up, and it's a completely different thing than in the case of the drums. It's not like a smashy thing. It is smashy and it is fuzzy, but it's not a transient rich source, so it's doing something completely different. I might be using very similar settings to what I would on the drums, but because it's a different instrument, different source, it's doing something vastly different. Let's take a listen to it in the mix, and you're just going to hear that guitar track just come up loads, and it's great. So let's start with it off first, and then we'll bring it in. I think it sounds cool, and if I had it just in the center channel, it would probably not be quite as noticeable, because it's not that noticeable in itself. Like, it is a subtle thing, far more subtle than on the guitars. On the drums. But because I'm spreading it out to the side, it adds this little bit of width, which I think is very, very cool. And it just means that we're getting a different texture, we're getting a different level of kind of squash, and we're throwing it out to the sides. You can do that with the drum parallel compression as well, if you want. I tend not to. I tend to kind of leave it in the middle, I guess. But two different ways there of using parallel compression. One on drums, which is super smashy, transient, grabby, and one on guitars. Different sources. They may be different kind of sounds because they're similar settings, but the actual source is completely different. Now, this is something completely unprepared, but let's try it on bass, because I kind of have it in my mind that on bass, it's not really going to work, because on bass, it's, I don't know, with parallel compression, you do get that bottom end, don't you? But you also get the squash, but we're kind of compressing the bass pretty heavily as it is. But let's just see. Let's go for, in fact, I know what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for so many plugins. Slate Digital. I'm going to go for Virtual Mix Rack, and I'm going to use that monster thing, the one that's like designed to be a parallel compressor. So let's take a listen to it on its own first. I'm just going to leave the settings as they are and just bring up the input and output, and then we'll turn the mix down and blend it in and see how it sounds. So before, kind of kills it, but we've got the high pass filter, so let's take that off a little bit. Let's go 250, whatever. Let's make it so it's not actually reacting to the bottom end as much. It's kind of as I thought. It's not really doing that much because in itself, like, you need something that the source has got to work for it. You know, if you've got a highly distorted rhythm guitar track and it's just like banging out power chords, parallel compression is probably not going to really give you that much, as it's not with the bass here, because there's not really anything that the parallel compression is helping. There's no real space in it. If you've got a bass track that is just single notes, then it's maybe going to work a little bit better because there's actually space for that parallel compression to come up. And I often see people using parallel compression in a kind of a one-size-fits-all way. They think that parallel compression by design is going to add loads of life, loads of character, loads of bottom end, loads of squash. And it is, but only if the source is right. And if you've got like I said, rhythm guitar or a bass guitar that's just really going for it, there's no space for that parallel compression to actually come in and do stuff. So in that instance, I don't think it's really going to work that well. Where it works best is where you've got a bit of space. So in drums, you've got those transients, and it's the areas in between the transients where the parallel compression is really having the effect. And on the guitars, that wasn't just like a straightforward power chord bit. That was kind of a higher bit, and there was a little bit of rhythm to it. So it kind of fitted. So parallel compression works best where you're giving it space to work. And if your mix is missing a little bit of life, a little bit of character, then the chances are it sounds a little bit empty. And that's what you're trying to alleviate. That's what you're trying to fix. So parallel compression could be the way to do it. So try it on drums because you've got that squash and that release and it kind of comes up. Still the settings that I've used there if you want. It's a good place to start. On guitars, it's just going to add texture. It's going to add another layer and you can spread it out to the sides to give it a load of good stuff. On bass, it's not going to be as good unless you've got the part that works with it. Unless you've got loads of space, in which case it might work. If it works for you, please do let me know. Leave a comment and I'll see you again soon. Take care.